mansion owner knew that the person they had been waiting for had finally arrived. How much time passed after that? The owner approached the mahogany bookshelf and grabbed a single book. The cover was made of leather, and there were unfamiliar letters on it. Not even the owner knew what they meant. He placed the book on the bookrest. He went to open the book, but then sighed. Do I even have the right to do that? But that thought lasted only a moment. The owner opened the book. I was walking down a mountain path, and yet at some point I found myself lost. The sun was about to set. Looking up, the trees were thick and dense, and they hid the dark red sky that was supposed to be up there. The temperature would no doubt drop soon too. But there was not a single thing behind me but trees. I quickly started walking at random. Yet finding the main path in the darkness proved next to impossible. Would I really have to spend the night out there? At that moment, I heard what sounded like a growl in the distance. Was it a wild dog or something? If so, then I had to get out of there as soon as possible. But to where? I squinted, and in the distance I spotted something that looked like an artificial light. I ran straight for that light. After running for a while, I reached some mansion grounds. Vines crawled up the walls, and it looked like a splendid old Western mansion. I couldn't sense anyone there, but the front light was on. I opened the heavy door. Beyond the door was a long hall. I couldn't see anything that looked like an exit, so I decided to keep going. Before long, I saw a door at the end of the hall. It looked like a heavy steel door. I went towards it, but as I got near, I stopped. A small figure at my feet stood in my way. Looking closer, it was a doll. It stood before me as if to say, I won't let you go any further. No, it actually was blocking my way. When I moved to the left, so did the doll. When I moved to the right, so did the doll. I had no idea how it worked like that. I quickly dodged it and took a step forward. But at that moment, the doll bared its fangs. Those eyes, that did not look man-made in the slightest, glared at me. Open the door. Ignoring it, I reached for the doorknob. The room went white in an instant. Lightning flashed. The hair all over my body stood on end. Next thing I knew, the doll fell to the floor, burnt. Did the lightning hit it? Maybe it took the brunt of the damage instead of me. I let go of the doorknob. I thought about running, but the door slowly opened, welcoming me in. I passed through the door, but for some reason feeling like I was being swallowed up. As I went through the open door, there was a small cylindrical room behind it. There were a set of stairs leading up that followed the stone walls. They looked rather long, and looking up, I couldn't see the end. Seemed the ceiling was rather high up there. Looking at it from the outside, it didn't look like a tower, and yet I couldn't see any other exits other than the door I just went through. I decided to climb the long stairs. I don't know how long I climbed for, but there was no end to the stairs in sight. There were no windows in the cold stone walls, and everything looked the same. Maybe there was some trick to it, and I kept walking around and around the same area. Keep climbing. If I went back now, I'd no doubt be playing right into the designer's hands. I made up my mind and decided to keep climbing. Several times I became discouraged, but I pushed myself to keep climbing. I don't know how much time passed, but around the point where time started to lose all meaning, something suddenly appeared. A small door. I was finally able to move on to the next space. There was a gorgeous bed in the corner of the room. The sheets on it were neat and tidy, almost like it was a bed for a noblewoman or someone of similar standing. Approaching it, I saw something unfitting of the scene before me, a drip by the pillow. Then, on the small table by the bed, I noticed my favorite food laid out on a tray. It was like someone had prepared it specially and was now awaiting a certain someone's arrival. They were waiting for me. Were they perhaps waiting for me? If they had gone to this much trouble just for me, then I would gladly accept. Turning heel, I sat on the bed and reached for the chopsticks on the tray. The end of the chopsticks were wet. It appeared the chopsticks had already touched the food as well. Come to think of it, the drip was half empty. I put my hands on the bed and pushed myself to my feet. At that moment, I felt something warm beneath my hands. This bed wasn't prepared for me. This was somebody else's bed. I threw the chopsticks back and went to leave the room. The wooden chopsticks clattered and made a sound like plastic. I couldn't see from where I'd been sitting, but a used syringe was sitting next to the tray. This time, I actually ran from the room. A thought crossed my mind. I don't want to end up like that. As I passed through the door, a wilderness spread out before me. No, wilderness sounded too savage. A deadly land you couldn't even call wilderness. The land spread out like a mirror. There was a moon in the sky, but that moon rising above the horizon wasn't the moon I knew. There was a massive crater in the center of it. Looking behind me, a massive sun was sinking below the horizon. This place, it was the Earth in ruins. A future where the sun had become a red giant. A space where nothing could survive, where there was only death. I shouldn't move around too much. I sat down on the spot. Then I put my ear to the ground, expecting that I might hear something. Go, 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 go. The sound was getting stronger. What on earth was it? The very next moment, the ground split open and water came gushing out. I found myself suddenly watching this sight from high in the air. The water turned into an ocean. The wilderness rose into mountains. Life sprung forth within the water, and the land turned green. Death wasn't just an end. A door appeared right in front of me, and I naturally went through it. I walked down the hall. Bang! Suddenly, the sound of something being hit echoed around me. Bang! It was that door. Seemed someone was hitting it from the inside. Bang! I went to approach the door when suddenly I heard a faint voice coming from somewhere. I listened closer. Someone. It was a woman asking for help. Her voice was so tiny that I couldn't tell where it was coming from. Was it coming from inside that room? Or was it coming from somewhere further away? Open the door. I reached out for the doorknob to open it, but it wouldn't open. Maybe it was locked because neither pushing nor pulling did anything. Maybe it was someone locked inside who was banging on the door. Maybe there was something special about the lock. I went to take a step back so I could check the door carefully, but I couldn't let go of the doorknob. I looked at it. It wasn't the doorknob I was holding. It was a person's hand. That person's hand was gripping mine. I yanked my hand back as hard as I could. I somehow got my hand free. The hand coming out from the doorknob wiggled around like it was looking for something. I ran away. Going through the door, the next location appeared. I was outside the mansion. It was well into the night, and much nicer than inside the building. There was no sign of any wild dogs. I should run. That was all I could do. I started running into the darkness. At some point, I'd have to reach somewhere. I looked up at the sky, and through the thick branches above me, I saw stars. I was relieved. I tripped on a tree root, got scratched by a branch, and tore my skin. I was bleeding, but still I kept running. I kept running, and when I saw some artificial light through the trees, I laughed. But that laughter soon turned to despair. I found myself back at the mansion. Go inside the mansion again. I reached for the mansion door again. It wasn't over yet. Maybe we need to keep going through doors for as long as we're alive. And there would be the real exit.